So, hi, Jason. Thank you so much for joining me in the next of our series in Conversation With. You've been in your role at the AWRC now for just over a month and a half. How's everything going over there?
Yeah, really exciting. It's an interesting role in the sense that as the new boy, I've been there since early December. It really has been a whirlwind of sort of meeting a whole variance of people, really. People from across the university and across AWRC, so I can get a real understanding of the research base, the work they're doing, the impact the AWRC is having, but also how that fits into the university and the wider city region. So yeah, it's been an absolute whirlwind. But as is always the case with these things, Sarah, things feel like they're slotting into place bit by bit by bit.
Well, it's fantastic to have you on board at the AWRC. I was there just over 12 months ago at the opening, so it's just over 12 months old. Why is the place just so important in the region and in the wider country?
The reason it's important is pretty simple, really. It's about making sure that people live longer and, most importantly, healthier lives. The overall mission of the AWRC is to effectively transform people's lives through innovations that make people move. So this whole focus on movement, on physical activity. Now, I don't want that to get lost in the idea that this is like an arbitrary thing that's just about exercise. This is about giving people healthier, longer lives. That's the whole point. That's the importance of the whole thing. What's surprising to me as somebody reasonably new to the AWRC is just how much it's managed to really achieve in that 12-month period. I think sometimes there's an external perception of university research centres, which is effectively what the AWRC is. It's a university research centre at Sheffield Hallam University, as things that are quite arbitrary and not connected. They do research, it's research for research's sake. That's just not the case. This is all about applied, impactful research. The work that we do is, in my opinion, based in world-class facilities. There is genuinely world-class research taking place that's not been done anywhere else in the world. But it's all about how do we apply that to society. And that's what's really key for me. So there's so much that's taken place with the work on long COVID and recover, the work on the Advanced Wellbeing Accelerator. Some of the key partnerships we've set up and made happen. They're quite remarkable, really. But feel free to ask away and I'll tell you about those things as well.
Well, the Recover programme really does interest me because we hear a lot about long COVID, the number of people that might be affected by COVID-19 in the first place, and how many will then go on to be affected by what is effectively a version of post-viral fatigue. How is the AWRC impacting people when they have it, COVID-19, and as they start to recover and contemplate life afterwards?
Yeah, well, I think it's worth going back to that original focus of AWRC about physical activity. That's what we coalesce around, even though we work in lots of health areas, if you like. And without being an expert on the Recover programme, to give you a very quick overview, if you like, it's actually directly affecting and has worked with around about sort of 10,000 of the population. This is research we've done with these people into looking at how we recover from sort of post-viral fatigue, like you say, what happens after people have had COVID-19. And what it's about is how do we look at those people and use physical activity, exercise, movement, recovery to get them back into the way they were before COVID-19, so dramatically affected them, really. Now, the interesting thing for me, obviously, we've all had friends that have had COVID-19, and there seems to be such a huge variance in how people recover. Now, from what I can see, it seems to me that people that are in good physical health before they catch it seem to recover quite well, but not always the case, as we well know. Okay, and really that really does impact upon the way AWRC looks at this situation. Classically, if you look at healthcare, it's about intervention. Somebody has, let's just say, for example, a hip that's breaking down, and somebody will have a hip implant in the typical orthopedic implantation way. Now, that's great, okay? But that's already getting to a point where that hip has failed. And to me, what AWRC should be about, and the exciting thing for me with the Olympic Legacy Park and AWRC, is this whole idea of prevention and resilience, with intervention in the middle. Now, the prevention part is about how, and by the way, the prevention part is so much more than just making you and I healthy and fit and strong. But actually, if we look back further, how do we get into the minds of children and parents and families and let them understand the importance of physical fitness, good diet, nutrition, what they focus on, good mental health, etc., etc., etc. So they have that resilience long before something happens to them. Let's just take mental health, for example. And then beyond that, if we get to a point of failure, like a hip implant, for example, how do we make people more resilient beyond that. So we get past the prevention stage. How do we make them more resilient beyond that? And that's often about rehab. How do we bring them back? And by the way, that's not just in terms of things like orthopedic implantation. It can be around cancer as well. How do you make sure somebody's fit enough to have cancer therapy and treatment? And it really can be a lottery. You know, if you're in a situation where you get a cancer diagnosis, the treatments that exist currently don't always fit each person. So we need to get better at personalizing that. So going back to the original question about the Recover program, that's still ongoing, by the way, in quite a big way. It really is about helping those people recover from COVID by using physical activity, well-being, etc., etc.
And we talk about physical activity a lot, and my role obviously is to support the region to build more infrastructure. But there's so much more we can do apart from just building infrastructure, isn't there?
There really is. As I guess like a lot of people have been following the sort of the social media mood and connections that I have and looking at the infrastructure that's springing up around Sheffield City region and hands up, I think it's wonderful. I think it's our future. I think it gives us the ability to give the next generation and our children, I know we both have young children, it gives us our ability to give our children something different. For so long now, I guess our generation has been looked upon as the one that's damaged things. You know, we've destroyed the environment, you know, the economies aren't great, etc., etc. But actually, the whole point of active travel and activity and wellbeing in general, it gives us the ability as a society for once to put hands up and say, actually, we're going to improve things. We're going to make it better. As a society, we will coalesce and make it better. But there is a really important point here. I think there has to be, it's almost like a pluralism of healthcare. What we've got to do is find a way to get people in areas of Sheffield that might not naturally engage with this, and I'm talking about active travel here and cycleways, etc., and understand the benefit. And what that comes back to for me as an individual is this. People say to me, is there a demand? We put cycle lanes in, we push active travel, we push wellbeing, is there a demand? Now, I turn that question on its head, and what I would say quite clearly is there a demand for you and I and everybody else in society to have a long, but more importantly, healthy life? And I think inherently that demand's there. It's just a basic human instinct, okay? So to me, the key is, it isn't about just saying, do you want a longer, healthy life? It's about saying, how do you get that, okay? And then how do you connect yourself to it? Now, a quick statistic for you without being too boring with stats. In our city, Sheffield, this really stark telling statistic. And that statistic is, between the most affluent and least affluent areas of this city, there is a 25-year gap in healthy life. 25-year gap in healthy life, and then that's remarkable. So think about what you do in 25 years. Think about what you've done by the time you were 25 years old. Think about, if you're a little bit older, the gap between 25 and 50 and the things that you did in that time frame, and what I wouldn't give to have another 25 years with my sister. So there's a 25-year gap there. In our society, in this affluent British society we live in, that shouldn't be the case. And it doesn't actually have to be this. It doesn't have to be the case. We can have a relationship between all parts of this city that understand that the route towards long, healthy life is by activity, by diet, by mental well-being, by access to green spaces, just to name 3 or 4 things off the top of my head. So it has to be an equitable partnership across the city. It can't just look at the most affluent parts of the city, or it won't work, and we can see that very clearly. And I can tell you now, in terms of the AWRC, it's written right into what we were created to be, to change health inequalities. But actually, if we can do 2 things, one, improve people's health, but I'd like people to understand that this whole health and wealth agenda is key. Good health equals wealth. And when I say wealth, I don't just mean cash. I don't mean bottom line. I mean our mental well-being. I mean our life in general, our relationships, our green spaces, our societies that connect together, right? That to me is health. And the health equals that. And that's a really important thing to remember when we're looking at how we live our lives and also the programs we get involved in.
Well, it's absolutely incredible. And I really am very grateful for you joining me today. Learning a little bit more about the AWRC is absolutely fascinating, your involvement in that. And I know that we'll continue to work together as we try and push out even more active travel infrastructure to benefit not just the people of Sheffield, but all across the Sheffield City region and South Yorkshire. So, Jason, thank you so much for joining me.